Kia ora and welcome to another Aotearoa Rugby Pod. I don't know about you, but I am exhausted. 8 games of rugby to watch over the weekend. Doesn't leave much time for anything else really, and they were fantastic games from France versus Australia, Ireland, South Africa, the New Zealand game in the World Cup. Wow, France not quite getting there in the Women's World Cup. It was a lot to watch. There were so many ups and downs. It was emotionally exhausting. Bringing in the fellas, goodness me, Bryn Hall in Japan, James Parsons in beautiful West Auckland. Moment of the weekend, Bryn.
Oh, it had to be the Black Ferns. Look, I think the way that they've come in the last 12 months to be able to get that result, I think, I remember sitting here this time last year thinking like it's going to be a hard task for them, but yeah, we'll dive into that a little bit more, but what a great result for that Black Ferns, and I can't wait to see Eden Park sold out because those girls thoroughly deserve with the brand of rugby that they're playing at the moment.
Yeah, it has to be the Black Ferns. I think the reason why is just, how big a margins they lost by 12 months ago or 8 months ago to turn it around and win a semi-final under that sort of pressure. And I suppose the most exciting thing for them is it wasn't a complete performance. So it leaves them, on edge, a little bit hungry going into this week, and just think they're timing their run perfectly. Do have to make notable mention of, obviously, Argentina. But I don't know if that can be a surprise going forward. After what they did here in New Zealand, they almost like to defend rather than anything else and pick up threes here and there. Australia as well. I know they fell short, but man, that was a big statement as well. So there was just plenty to like across the whole weekend, really.
Pressure does funny things. Jipper would say in a commentary that it makes diamonds, I'm sure, but it does funny things. And when Joanne lined up that kick from in front to win that game, I doubt many people thought, Bryn, that was going to miss.
No, there's just one time where you want someone to miss a kick, and obviously sorry for all our French fans from afar, but as a Kiwi, I was hoping her to miss that because I think, what they did, and I guess the growth that we've seen them in the last, 12 months from when they had that India tour, they've come through with a new coaching regime. They've gone through that little period of time getting test matches before the World Cup, and now you can see New Zealand's really right behind them. And I think we all want that climax of having the opportunity to play the English. And I think, to be honest, if we're looking at that Canadian match as well, they were very, very lucky to get away with that result. So I think the test that they had against the French and getting through that, I think it's going to set them up very nicely for this English team, which I think, to be honest, I think if we get it right, and I think having that pressure in the moments that we had to get through and adapt our game a little bit, especially in that second half, I think it sets us up very, very well for a final at Eden Park in front of a full-packed stadium.
It's almost like Wayne Smith touched on it straight after the game, as he sort of laughed that no one in his team wants to kick. But you can see that they are going to take the lessons out of that game, and they will be better for it going into this week, because that's probably the only area they missed. They really sold their own up front. They do the business at the breakdown, but I sort of agree, and Ross, you've sort of mentioned it before, their lack of kicking does give the opposition that opportunity to attack their attacking breakdowns. So if they can just get that balance of attack right in this final, they're putting themselves right in the position to win it.
The really good thing that I saw in the second half was the ability to be able to have those attacking kicks to try and get it behind. So even though some of them didn't come off of the monitor, they ricocheted and didn't go through. Look at Renee Holmes' try, and then obviously trying to get in behind the French was really good, and I guess that's what they're going to try and take forward coming in the next week, with obviously Renee Holmes probably to be playing at fullback again. But I think there's one thing, Jip, that I did see as well, because I don't think you can change too much in the week that's to come. They've got their DNA, and they can only make little changes. But I think if they are going to exit and hold on to the ball a little bit more, I think they need just a little bit of variation around their pick and go game. For the whole tournament, they've just been picking and going and getting someone to latch on and go forward. Whether you change the point of attack, Chip, you could probably talk a little more about this, but little tips to get in behind to be able to go over the advantage line and have a bit of variation around there, because they are going to do pick and go a lot from their own half. So that's probably just one thing that I saw they could try and touch up on when it comes to that pick and go, trying to exit out of their own half.
Yeah, but I don't think it's that big a change to, like, defences are starting to realise they're not going to kick long. And, if those wingers do come up, then just boot it long. It doesn't necessarily have to go out. But if you get a good chase line, they've shown, especially in that quarterfinal, mentioned it last week, Demant's kick down the middle, it still did the job, got them out of trouble. And then if the wingers don't and they keep dropping back, then there's our strike power's on the edge. You when teams try to close a game out and you pick and go, you're right there for a penalty, aren't you? They're going to fall at their feet and it can be a turnover, clean wrong. So why not go to the edge and potentially you could kick from the edge, or you could have a strike and then go to the box kick. They've got the options there. I just think they've just got to be more open to that. The exit is going to involve a little bit more of the boot this week.
Jeff, I want to pick up on that point you made about the breakdown and the predictability of the play leading to the French being able to dominate and get the number of turnovers they did.
Well, I think the first things first, like the breakdown all starts with the carry. So if the carry's dominant and they go between bodies and they get across the gain line, then they're in the dominant position to get those attacking cleaners in and win the ball. It's when you don't win that collision is when you become in trouble, or you lose your legs too easy and you just drop to the ground in front of them. So a lot of the onus, and Bryn, you'll agree with this, as a 9, the onus is on the carry. You would almost know as a 9, get hit behind the advantage line, it's going to make it a nightmare for you to either win the ball and or put the position to, attack or kick on your terms.
I think the variation that they're going to have around this week is going to be really important, because it's a really good opportunity to be able to get that really quick ball. So like you said, the ball carrier has a job to do, use footwork or being able to get over the advantage line, and then the two cleaners that are inside and outside them have to do a job. And sometimes when you've got that direct mindset, you just know that you've got to be able to get behind that ball carrier, take the bodies out and clean through, and that's been able to get quick ball. But I think with the Black Ferns as well, they've actually shown some good animation, actually tip ability and execution in that. So I think they're going to have to marry up a little bit, being really direct, maybe early for the first 20, get some good go forward ball, and then being able to maybe have the tips and going out the back with Demont and getting those players on the edge off that. So it's really interesting, because I think for the Black Ferns, the level of intensity what they're going to have to be at for 80 minutes, they're going to have to be on for every single time, and they're not always going to have momentum. But I think if they've got that mindset that one little moment here, one little moment there, that's the kind of mindset that they're going to have, because they're going to have to be right on the job for 80 minutes against this English team.
What did Canada show you, Jip, about what can be done to nullify England?
Yeah, look, I think it was a good execution from the team. And by that, they stunted them together rather than trying to go to ones and twos. Where you'll play into England's wheelhouse, whether it be breakdown, maul, is when you're trying to solve solutions as ones and twos. And then it's the grain of that pressure and get a roll on. So to me, it was just a great execution of the plan. It wasn't always perfect, but it was their intent. And whether it's almost like when you commit to something, whether it comes off or not, if you bring the right intensity or the intent into those collision areas, you're probably going to come out on top and or even at best, rather than losing any of those opportunities.
The line-out drive, Bryn, that seemed to be a place where I suppose we didn't think that England could really be dominated, but there were times when Canada got that spot on.
Yeah, that's it. And I think, I look at our set piece and where we've got to, Connor on the weekend, to be able to win the ability at the back ball was going to be really crucial for us, and the execution of that was really good. So, whether the Black Ferns want to have the ability to be able to go to the line-out more, it's a great weapon if you can get it right. The French have done it very, very well, being able to attack the blind side with your 9s, and you look at Kendra Coxage, if you've been able to attack off the back of a line-out more and you get that right, it's really hard to be able to defend that. So, look, I can imagine the powers that be and that coaching staff will maybe having little specials here and there to be able to try and get them behind that English pack. But at the same time, that English women's team is pretty successful, and they'll be thinking around solutions around how they can get that right. And they've got the experience. What is it now? 30 international test matches that they've won. So they're winning ugly, but they've been able to problem solve on the go. Very similar to what the Black Ferns did in that second half, and it's going to be a great chess match coming forward on the weekend. Can't wait for it.
I think it's also a little bit, Ross. Probably because they've been so dominant, teams haven't gone there. And over time, they haven't had those opportunities in live matches to defend. You can do a lot at training, but there's nothing, you know your teammates really well, so you can get into potentially bad habits. And because teams haven't gone there a hell of a lot, because it's been their strength, that over time, maybe their ability to actually execute it hasn't been as challenging as I've seen in this World Cup. And I think that variation Bryn talks about is, yes, we've got to go direct at them and back our driving more, but then once we've sucked them in, we've got to have the ability to go off that.
It kind of reminded me of a Stephen Fleming tactic. Let's go cricket for a second. back in the early 2000s where Damien Martin was incredible for Australia, square of the wicket, and he was just immense there. So Fleming just put 3 fielders there, bolted in the area and said, we're going to get you where you're at your best. And inevitably, time after time, they got him out there. So, it feels like if you hit them there, then that's when maximum pain could be, Bryn, if they don't get it right. That's when the confidence goes down. That's when you get on top of them.
But you've got to be brave at the same time because, if you want them to give them opportunities, whether it be discipline issues, and you take them to the corner, as you know, Jip, as a forward, I know we're using a cricketing analogy here and a cricketing term with Stephen Fleming, but when you're going out to a line out more, it's so hard to be able to defend that. And so you can score points off that, and the English have shown that. But I think if there are good plans in place, and you'd like to think Cron and the coaches will hopefully have a plan around that. But I can't imagine they're wanting to defend too many line out mauls from the English, both sides of the ball.
The feeling when the Black Ferns and the other teams are standing in front of a full house, singing the national anthem with a smile on their face, uncontrollably joyous in the way they sing the national anthem. It's not necessarily hand on heart and tears or puffed out machismo or whatever it is that you see in the men's game. There's just straight up joy and appreciation for what they're going through right now. And it's refreshing, but it also makes you feel close to them and it makes you want to support them, Bryn. It's a completely different look and feel to the men's game, and it's refreshing.
Oh, it is. You can, like you said, Ross, it's the mannerisms that they're showing, whether it be with, the national anthem and smiling and looking around at the occasion that they've had. You look at the opening ceremony, pretty much a full packed out Eden Park. Same again, 30-odd thousand at Eden Park. And I guess this is what they've wanted. Women's rugby has needed this, and they've, constantly be saying they want to be given opportunities to play in meaningful test matches, been televised, been advertised, been able to give opportunities to show their brand of rugby. And I think that's the one thing that's really, brought New Zealand together is around the way that they're playing, the attacking brand of rugby that they're playing at the moment is really exciting for them to watch. Like I looked 12 months ago, and the brand of rugby that they were playing, it wasn't that great to be able to watch. And I know there were obviously difficulties around them not being able to play and COVID and all those things, but we feel like we've been through the journey with them, not just at the World Cup. We've seen that with the growth of obviously the coaches coming in, they've played the Wallaroos, they've gone through that, they've been able to see in front of us on TV a lot more. And now we're at the Rugby Championship at the World Cup, and we've seen them grow, and we almost feel like we're on the journey with them. And I think you just see that as well with the enjoyment and the kind of the messages that they're giving throughout the media, whether it be Ruby Tui or Hirani or even Demont, and the messages that they're giving. How can you not want to be supporting them and getting right behind them as a New Zealand supporter? So, I'm all in, and I really hope that the Eden Park crowd shows out there, and it's a full packed stadium. And I actually think it will. I think it will with how the brand of rugby that they're playing at the moment.
And the follow question to that, Chip, is how does the men's game learn from this and apply those things that are so endearing about the women's game right now?
Well, I suppose I look at it from another lens is we've got to make sure as the women's game gets more and more professional that we bottle what we're seeing and what it represents, the opportunity in front of big crowds. Because over time, especially off the back of this World Cup, the women's game is just going to skyrocket in terms of opportunities to be playing more and going towards more of a full-time program. So it's making sure that we never lose sight of these images and these feelings that these players are getting to feel as probably being the pioneers off the back of a lot of players' work previous to them. You look at a lot of the ex-Black Ferns in the crowd, that you can see the pure joy in their face and gratitude for where the women's game's got to, and that's only going to grow. And just like I'm sure many, as we've heard, a lot of, male rugby players have gone in and helped from a skill set point of view, and they've, the female players have learnt off them. I think there's an opportunity for the male game to look at the female game and remember what it's all about, and is that love and joy for playing this game and learning from that experience that they're seeing and witnessing right now.
Not taking it for granted.
It's when you get a major injury, you come back with a new lease of life and gratitude just to be training, just to have the jersey on again, and you just play some of your best rugby. And it's not that you take it for granted, but sometimes you're so narrow focused to be the best, be successful, win, and maybe a little bit outcome focused, especially when under pressure. But when you strip it all back and you look at it from a pure, what do you love about the game? Why do you play it? It just brings the best out of individuals, and you will see that raw emotion. And for some people, it will be smiling. Some people, it will be crying. Whatever it is, it's great to see, and it's that authenticity that you talk about, Ross, and that's what connects us all to it.
There's something endearing about it. And when I look at the men's game, it's a completely different scenario. But boy, it was an interesting weekend in the men's game too. There were close games. There was England getting beaten by Argentina, France just pipping Australia. The Ireland-South Africa game was a beauty in the end. Which way was that going to go? There was Rassie Erasmus getting on Twitter again. Michael Checker doubling up as a rugby league coach in the same week as a rugby coach. You know, there's all of these amazing things going on right now. We'll get onto all of those. Let's talk a little bit about Wales versus New Zealand. Wales 23, the All Blacks 55 at the Millennium Stadium. Were you completely surprised, Bryn, by the way that Wales approached that game tactically in comparison to the way that almost every other team has approached the All Blacks in the last few years?
Oh, I don't think so. I think, to be honest, we got out to a pretty quick start around the breakdown area and getting some really good go-forward ball. And we've talked around a lot around this. When the All Blacks get their breakdown work right, they tend to score a lot of points and been able to put a lot of pressure on teams. And, we did that with Cody Taylor's first 2 tries in the first 20 minutes. And so kind of put them on the back foot with Wales. And maybe they had to change their game tactically where they might have wanted to kick the ball a little bit more. And I guess wanted to play a little bit more running rugby, and probably the conditions didn't help as well. Obviously, hearing the commentating, it was a bit dewy inside and was a little bit wet. So, but to be honest, what it felt like for me, the game-wise, was that any team that gave away the penalties in their own half or in general were able to then score points off that. It seemed like it went back and forth. Even though New Zealand started really well, the All Blacks did. Wales came back, and then it went back and forth. And then, to be honest, Aaron Smith's 2 tries at pretty crucial moments was able to just get us over the line, and we came over the top of them in the last 10, 15 minutes. But for me, I think maybe it was the fact that we just started so well, because the breakdown work and the efficiency, whether it be through the pick and goes to Artie Severa and his big dummy, that I don't know how people keep falling for that, because he always does it. But he's the man that we'll be able to touch on, because if he's not in the conversation for the best player in the world at the moment, I don't know who is, because he's stapling his claim with the way that he's playing right now. But at the same time, I thought the All Black forward pack was outstanding through their efficiency of the breakdown for long periods of time, especially early on, and we were able to get some really quick ball for Aaron Smith to be able to then have that line break, or just being able to get it through them with pick and goes like Artie Severa and co.
The Artie Severa thing's interesting because it's the 4th year in a row that he's been well and truly in the conversation for best player in the world. You've got to feel, Jipper, that this could be his year to get that prize. Surely, if you do it for that long, it's got to come into it.
Yeah. Look, I think it's probably going to be a no-brainer. Like, you just can't ignore it. Both sides of the ball, every facet of play, whether it's set piece, breakdown, ball in hand, defence, he's just relentless. And I do have to credit the numbers in front of him. Man, they've taken some heat, but that was another massive step up for numbers 1 to 5. And even, a guy like Dalton Papali'i, I thought he really won collisions as well. Ball in hand, but defensively, those low numbers, friends. And the key is look how well Aaron Smith played. Look how much time he had. That's the best we've seen him, purely because that is the best we've seen the All Black forward pack this year. They just dominated. And I was a little bit surprised with the tactics to try and change momentum from, like, I know accruing 3 points is great, and they did it a couple of times when they were right in the 22, and they were easy kicks right in front, but maybe they could have, taken a leaf out of Ireland's book and just kept that pressure on while they had it and tried to suck some energy out of the tank so that the collisions became a little bit more even, or they got the opportunity to be dominant. And really take the game by the scruff of the neck, because I know they were right in it to the 60-minute mark, but they just fell away because they had too much work prior to that from, obviously losing collisions, but also backtracking a hell of a lot of that sort of first 60.
Alongside Artie, Dalton Papali'i is getting a good crack, obviously, during this tour as the number 7. Bryn, were you impressed with what he brought? And is there a chance that if he keeps on bringing it, that next year we'll be asking, well, should Sam Cane really be in the team?
Oh, he was outstanding. And I think, you already will see the long run that he made with being able to do line break, which he has in his arsenal, and it's a great attribute that he has to him. But look, you look at those collision areas that he's involved in. They're just so dominant. He's got such a great intent and mindset around that. And, he'll make, 15, 16 tackles real easily. But, the dominance, and I like seen him to be able to influence, whether it be slow ball, is he slowing down the ball for 3 seconds, has he been able to get over the ball, and all those kind of little things that you see a 7 out to get. But I think, look, if he can get more opportunities, I think you look at this year, a lot of people would say it's 50-50 between Papali'i and Kane, being able to who wants to play, who wants to not. But look, I think all he can control is being able to put back-to-back performances and then put it on the coaches to make the decisions. You don't want to be able to have one game here and there and then listen to the outside noise. But, not knowing Dalton a little bit, he's not been able to do it. He'll be pretty process focused around getting performances back-to-back. And that's probably the best thing for him, knowing that Sam Cane's not there through injury. He's going to have this end-of-year tour to be able to get performances back-to-back and add stake his claim going into next year, which is, Rugby World Cup year. Yeah, and Sam Cane is the captain, but look, all he can control is playing well. And every time he seems to do it at this level and gets given opportunities, he plays very, very well.
I think it's unfair to, talk as if Sam Cane hasn't performed himself. He's had some pretty big test matches throughout this season. And I liken it to the hooker competition at the moment. Samasoni has played the house down, and he has brought the very, very best out of Cody Taylor. And there was question marks, earlier in the year, and he has just gone from strength to strength as well. And that competition and the ability of players to play well and put the coaches under pressure, I see it no different in the 7 role. And Dalton probably hasn't had the chance to put his hand up, but with these string of games, I can see a similar relationship leading into next year. And the one thing I know about Sam Cane, he never assumes he's going to be picked. Don't you worry about that. He will be, harnessing everything he's got to get healthy and come back just as big and as better. But it is nice to see Dalton getting that opportunity because we know how good he can be and will be.
Another Blues player just doing his thing on the international stage, Chip.
Don't chuck me down that rabbit hole just yet.
I just think we could start a James Parsons drinking game on this show. 1 through 5, stepping up, and Blues player. Yeah. Anytime those things are said.
Hey, mate, 1 through 5, just cop it when it's not going well, but they don't get the bits humming.
Yeah, totally. The Scots against Fiji. When you saw what they did against Fiji, how do you think it's going to stack up this week, Bryn, against the All Blacks?
I'll tell you what, Fiji were very good in that first half. The attacking brand of rugby that they were playing and being able to put the Scots under pressure. Look at their first try, and I guess the animation they had made it very simple and asked a lot of questions of the Scottish. But, they were able to go back to set piece and being able to assert dominance in that realm and being able to, I guess, get the momentum back with their line-out maul and a few scrums, but more predominantly their line-out mauls. But, yeah, I think you kind of just tick that off, to be honest. You review that, and it's always tough playing Fiji, and I probably would think that, not surprised really seeing it that this result would go. You talk around consistency, and that's probably one of the things with the Scottish team is the consistency. And so, they'll be ramping up and knowing that their preparation is going to go up a lot, knowing that the All Blacks are hitting, 5 wins in a row and getting a little bit more of their consistency. But at the same time, you take confidence in knowing that, the All Blacks, if they don't get their breakdown work right, they have a chance to be able to get to win this game. And so that's an area that they beat. The All Blacks beat the Welsh, and they did that convincingly. You'd have to think that that's where the Scottish will try and get that inconsistency that we've seen a little bit with the early part of this year with the All Blacks in that breakdown area.
I think the Scottish will probably be confident on the back of Australia's performance. As we sort of said, they probably lost that game and they put themselves, in the contest and probably should have won it. And the Fijian game, through lack of discipline, potentially didn't give them the full challenge that potentially they could have been expecting. But I do think they've got enough there as long as they can take the opportunities. And as I mentioned before, I do think these teams have got to take a leaf out of Ireland and just, especially early in the fixture, going to the corner and just being relentless. Even if you come away with no points, it's out of the tank. And that really has an impact the other side of the ball. And that's when the breakdown collisions don't start being as dominant because you're knackered. You're running out of juice because you've been defending and you're defending driving mauls. So there is an aspect of chancing their arm and going after it rather than just thinking 3 points here and there is going to do the job.
A couple of years ago, the All Blacks required a Bowden Barrett tackle on Hogg in the corner to get by, and they only just scraped in 22-17. I feel like, unlike the Welsh, the Scottish probably believe that they can achieve this?
Well, I think it's given themselves an opportunity to be able to be in those moments, and I think that's probably the one thing that they'll be wanting to see. a lot of people would think that it could be a cricket score, which we're accustomed to seeing with the Scottish team and the All Blacks in the previous. But I think, and like it probably comes back to this point, the All Blacks have lost games this year against teams that you wouldn't think they'd lose against. They lost against Argentina, and they obviously had a really tough series against Ireland. But I think if the Scottish do get themselves in that position where it's really tight with 20 minutes to go, 15 minutes to go, they've shown that they've lost those test matches in those moments. So, if they do find themselves that it's very, very tight, we know that the All Blacks have the opportunities to be able to do that, and we've seen them be able to come back in the past, whether in this year's team have been able to do that, but the previous of the All Blacks and knowing what they could do in those kind of moments. But it's been able to take the learnings if the Scottish do get that. They've got to be able to try and nail those moments in the game right then and there, because it might be only one or two opportunities that they get, whether it be a line-out maul, nail your set piece, or a scrum, or being able to go through in your 22 and being able to exert pressure for a long period of time. If they do get in that's what they've got to be able to try now, because I think it's going to be a very close game. If they do get the result, it might come down to 1-2 key moments that the Scottish probably haven't prevailed in the last probably 12 months in those kind of moments in games.
I think Wayne Pivac as well summed it up quite well. He felt his side gave the All Blacks time and space, too much time and space. So just as much as they're going to have to be bold with attack, I think they're going to have to be bold with the defence. Like if they can really get up in that face, catch the All Blacks behind the advantage line, challenge them at set piece, then they're playing the game on their terms. But it does come with risks, because the All Blacks are showing they're getting better and better at, holding their own depth and holding their feet to create that time and space if it's not there, or through the attack and kicking game. But I think if they can come out of the blocks and bring real line speed, and not allow the bodies to win the collisions, it gives them an aspect around the breakdown, which is just so key.
8 years ago, Jip, you made your Test debut against Scotland at Murrayfield. Obviously, a pretty special moment for you. You still look very young. But what's your memory of Murrayfield, and I suppose your memory of what this All Blacks team will encounter as they make their way into the ground and towards this challenge?
Well, they're beautiful people. They certainly pump you up and host you really well throughout the week. So you do grow a close affiliation with them and their passion and love for the game, their passion and love for the All Blacks, as well as their team. But the stadium will be packed. The lights will probably go out, and the phone lights will go on. Anthems sung. Like, there is a real atmosphere that they bring. And you certainly feel them as their 16th player, especially if it gets tight. They start to go up a notch.
There's definitely a buzz in that stadium. It's quite different from the other stadiums. It's almost like the music and the lights create like almost a dance party vibe, and you can feel this noise within the crowd. Whereas, the Welsh, you hear them when they sing, and the French, you hear them when the band comes on. But in that ground, there's just this buzz, the way that they turn it into this show.
It was such a cool experience to have on my debut and being in that environment and the history of the stadium. And like you say, like, the music builds the intensity and it almost zeroes in your focus. And they pushed us really close on that occasion. And, we needed a couple of the big guns to get us home. None more so than the man of the match, Jeremy Thrush, of course. But I just thought I'd get a jab in there since he's given me plenty over the years. But yeah, look, it's a great place to play. It will always hold a close place in my heart, and I'm watching both sides go to battle this weekend.
Let's move on to England versus Argentina. This game took me by surprise, I suppose. I didn't watch it live. I saw the result before I watched it, and I was like, oh wow. England have now lost 4 of their last 6. Argentina, we know, Jip, can get a boil over, but they're playing each other in their opening game of the World Cup next year. This game meant something.
It's almost like the blueprint is when Argentina step up defensively. It's exactly like what happened in Christchurch. England had all the ball, they had all the territory, they had all the opportunity, but through that line speed pressure and the aggressive nature of the breakdown, forced errors. Believe it or not, as we always say, when Argentina win the discipline battle, they normally win test matches because they keep themselves in the game. And England, obviously provided Buffali the opportunity to kick, similar to Christchurch. So some teams are like that. They almost feed off defence. They get an energy and a belief the lack of collisions and the simplicity of just protecting your mate's inside shoulder and, being aggressive with a tent around the breakdown. And it just seems to work for them. When they go away from that or they lose that is when they can sort of have those blowout scores like we saw in Hamilton. So the big test for Argentina is that consistency, but it's not a surprise, I don't think, as much as it used to be. They're normally in and around the semi-final at World Cups, and I think they're growing in belief. And maybe it's an element of less is more with their coach. Obviously coaching league teams and then coming in, probably not always, cracking the whip, makes them, really perform in front up.
And I think one thing in that game as well, you talk around discipline, Jip, which has been a big problem for them in test matches. Look, their set piece was great. They were able to win at 100%, both at scrum and line-out time, which is always important, especially against the Northern Hemisphere. Michael Cheika as well, the ability that he's running at the moment, give him a shout-out at Michael Cheika with him being able to do the league and the rugby. But I think the 2 tries that they did score, Jip, they were able to score and they weren't lost opportunities. And I know Alwyn Farrell's win is obviously the one that was knocked on, and Karedes goes all the way in the 50th minute. But I think those are crucial times in the game to be able to score points. And you obviously got Boffelli that scores how many points did he score? 20 odd points, 25 odd points for a try and penalties. So it does seem like it is their DNA. But I think that's the one thing that I saw as well. When they were able to score those 2 tries, they made them count, and then it put pressure on England. And when you're defending at 89, 90%. Winning your set piece ball, having 30-odd kicks, which seems to be their DNA, and putting defensive pressure on England, that might be their DNA moving forward for next year in Rugby World Championship, which is World Cup rugby, Jip. That's the way you do win World Cup rugby, being able to play great defense, kicking, executing that well, and getting your set piece right, which they did on the weekend.
Yeah, and I think even in this game, if we take them back to when they beat the Wallabies at home, their kicking game is quite pinpoint and can put players under pressure, and they can score points off the back of that. So they're a real threat across the park now. They're not a one-dimensional team and they do have that unpredictability. But the biggest thing that they've cleaned up, as we said, is their discipline, but their ability to know when to offload. So often they used to be the team that offloaded the most, and it would just be too many 50-50s, which would provide opportunity for the opposition. They just don't give you that anymore. They are really disciplined in their attack strategies and their ability to hold on to the ball.
The English almost the opposite. They lacked discipline. They threw the ball away. Whenever they got points, they then threw away those opportunities too and gave Argentina some, Jip.
Yeah, I mean, it's the discipline that, similar to the All Blacks, they had a hell of a lot of territory, but they let them out of jail, and they just didn't take those opportunities. Like, they kept within a sniff, and that's probably credit to Owen Farrell and his ability to kick penalties himself. But it definitely wasn't the clinical performance that I was expecting out of them. But it also sets up the rest of the calendar, because we know that I think it'll bring the best out of them moving forward. They won't make the same mistakes twice.
Can Argentina beat Wales next weekend, Bryn?
Oh, I think they definitely can. I think if they show the kind of performance they had on the weekend, but it's very similar to when they played the All Blacks, got that win against the All Blacks, and then the following week, the consistency that we've harped on about with the Argentinian team, it's going to be probably a question that's going to be asked again, because the consistency is the biggest thing for them. But if they can get their DNA, which what we've kind of talked about, if that's how they're going to win test matches, playing without the ball, kick well, defend very, very, very well, which is a good way to do it. It gives themselves an opportunity against the Welsh. But I think, again, for them, you'd like to think moving into the Rugby World Cup, they've had some really good scalps this year. They've beaten the All Blacks. They've obviously beaten the English. It'd just be great for them to probably get 1 or 2 more performances that'll set them really well and give them some real confidence going into that 2023 World Cup. Because we look at last year, we were talking around the consistency and where their game was at, and they've made a massive improvement in the last 12 months. So hopefully they can keep doing that with a result on the weekend.
Exactly the same score in Paris, 30-29. This time to France over Australia. Now, Jip, I know you're a big fan of the Wallabies and the guts that they show. This was probably another good indication of how they've got it, but not quite got it yet.
Oh, I just felt for them. You could see how tight they got on defence. And that was a great ball to Pernod, and that was a hell of a try in such a big moment. He just made it look so easy. It almost caught me off guard because obviously they'd just got the penalty, and I was like, points, they're going to have to score. And then next minute he's over the line. Like, I was just like, what just happened? Like, in an area that they'd been so strong in the whole game, I just felt for them, man. It was heartbreaking to see because they'd done all the work, but you do have to credit the resolve of the French. Like, man, they were not in that game at all. They didn't even look like the same French side. So I think, it shows their quality of, still probably being at home, potentially equal favourites, if not the favourites still, because I think, that home ground advantage got them away with one they probably should have lost.
Their discipline really cost them as well. They had 11 penalties that they gave away in their own half to give the ability to be able to give penalties and, I guess, accumulate those points, which, the French weren't playing that well, but being able to pick up points here and there, to stay tight and to be able to not let it blow out, gave them opportunity to be able to have Pernod the opportunity to win that test match. But again, another result for the Australians that they'll just be gutted because, hopefully David Rennie's taking confidence from it, and they are, they should be winning these test matches. And I guess the pleasing thing, the Australians will be wanting to win these test matches, but the pleasing thing is that they are just that close to winning these test matches and building confidence. So I know it's tough for Australians, but they're just losing these test matches by the skin of their teeth, which is probably tough for Dave Rennie and their coaching staff.
I think the pleasing aspect is how dominant they were at set piece, and in particular defending mauls, and that is going to be a big factor. Like, I thought their discipline around that was really strong, but it is the old adage with Dave Rennie coach side is getting that fire and the calmness, just sort of equal, not letting one take over the other, if you know what I mean. And that's that discipline, is just that fire in your belly. You just got to have that coolness upstairs that you don't, step over the line and give easy outs for the opposition. And again, it was, I don't know if it was the difference. I feel like the difference was just one brilliant moment, unfortunately, and a missed tackle. They definitely put themselves in a position to be the winner on that game. But yeah, it's going to be a constant battle because of the level of intensity and aggression that Dave Rennie demands from his pack in particular, and getting that sort of, as I say, that mix right.
They've got Italy coming up this week. Not as big a challenge, I suppose, in a lot of ways. Italy gave Samoa a good 49-17 hiding on the weekend. Could Italy upset Australia, Jipper?
Oh, I still think it's an Australian win because there'll be a bit between their teeth. But I will admit, I did not see that result against Samoa coming. I had high hopes for the Samoan team. They've been over there a while. They've got some really quality players back, and they are really well coached. We saw that in the Pacific Nations. So I'm a little bit surprised. It just shows time when you're not together, can sort of take you back a few steps. So they've got a bit of work to do for the rest of their campaign. But you do have to credit the Italians. Like they've played. They always play with passion, but they were just dominant and ruthless. But I think beating Australia is a stretch too far.
Let's have a look at Ireland versus South Africa. This was the game of the round beforehand. This is the one everyone was looking forward to. Ireland win 19-16 against South Africa. I think that is a relatively predictable scoreline, but this game could have gone either way. When you look at what South Africa didn't quite get right, what would have been the difference between them winning and losing that game?
Oh, I think having a goal kicker helps. I think, unfortunately, in big test matches, they even talked in the commentary, having a kicker, obviously with Colby struggling and Willemse struggling as well, a few points here and there probably could have been the difference. But I think as well, probably in the 46th and 49th minute was a very, very tough first half. I think, defensively, they put on a lot of pressure in the Irish phase play attack. Time and time again, Malpepe and co are making great decisions around that edge and being able to put pressure on their phase play ship, which we saw very, very well in the June series with the All Blacks and questioning us. But that starts at the breakdown, and the ability to be able to slow down that ball gave the likes of Pepe and co to be able to get up and really pressure that side of the ball, which was great. And so that was one thing they did really well. But I think one thing that they probably would want back and would want it to maybe get a little bit better was their line out more. I thought the defence of the Irish was outstanding. We've talked about when they get into that 22-metre zone, or even in big moments, they tend to go to their line out more, and they were able to stop that and not been able to get any points from that. And so you've got to be able to tip your hats to the Irish in the defence. And then I also just thought the injection of Jamison Gibson-Park and what he brought to that Irish side, it just probably showed more to me that, obviously Conor Murray's then played his 100th game, was an unfortunate that he went off. But I think as soon as Jamison came on, their ability to be able to play it at speed and tempo, and what we saw in that June series was so much more better to see with that Irish team. But at the same time, the South Africans were there or thereabouts. The last 15 minutes, they dominated and they scored a couple of tries off that, and it was a hell of a test match. But yeah, just those areas that I picked up, that's probably one thing that I think the South Africans will be looking back and thinking, I wish we got that a little bit better.
You talked about DNA earlier for different teams. Are you surprised, or is there some sort of genius to the fact that right now the South Africans are moving away from their DNA and trying things with Willemse and Colby at fullback and some slightly different approaches to what we would normally expect of them, where kicking is just so important to what they do?
But I think they're realising that they have got firepower. We spoke about it when the All Blacks were over there. When they play, they are at their best, and maybe they've really come to terms with that and know that their balance of their attack, when it's on, is to create a bit of that license to attack. And the counter-attack game is such a big part, and they're so good in the air that they can really make teams pay when they're attacking the aerial game and playing off the back of that. And if they get in trouble, the one thing they'll always have is their pack to build a couple of phases, win collisions, and then they can kick off those turns. And that's what I like, is they're giving themselves the ability to have a crack, but they also know they've got the best bailout in the world, and that's their big boys up front and their kicking game. And their aerial game. They are just so dominant in the air.
Is it a bit of a distraction, though, because the dominance of the pack and the line-out drive just wasn't quite there on the weekend, Bryn? Are they all in or are they all out, if you know what I mean? Or can they balance the two elements of their game?
I think they can balance it. Look, I think it's a weapon, but I think, teams as well will probably be spending so much time to be able to stop them more. Just maybe a little bit of variety around that to be able to try and get in through that transition, knowing that, we might need to get a 6 or 7 here forwards defensively, the Irish, for example, to be able to hit that more, knowing it's coming. So maybe a possibility of getting a bit of variation, be able to try and manipulate that, because then once that happens, then you might be able to get some more dominance in the line out more, because you might have a couple of guys standing off wanting to think there might be Malcolm Marx or, someone coming down that line with Delande down there. So I think they'll be able to still go to that line out more. I don't think they're going to change that much, because once they do get it right, Malcolm Marx has got a pretty good success rate at scoring tries at the back of that more. So they might just get a little bit better and just alter a little bit around the variation in that transition, and being able to, I guess, hold off a few more defensive players in the line out more.
I'd love to see Malcolm Marx a little willy away off the back, tearing around the corner into that channel one. He's got Delende off his shoulder, and he's got someone like Colby or Willemse out the back, and just running this variation or just running absolutely straight up the guts. That is not a body I'd want at full pace coming down my channel. So I think they've got the artillery there to do it. They've just got to back themselves, because everyone knows they're driving more. So that's all teams train during the week. So, and the Irish are a big pack. And it wasn't a surprise that they got some dominance at set piece. That's why they're world number one. So having those variations, I think, is key to South Africa defending their title.
And let's talk about Ireland then, because it is just consistent, isn't it, Chip? It's consistent. It is week in, week out against everyone.
Yeah, and I just think it just confirms their world ranking. Like they are the best team in the world at the moment. They are just fronting up. And like you say, that level of consistency across the park. And I do agree with Bryn a little bit, nothing on Murray, but when Jamison, Gibson-Park and Sexton are together, they are operating a lot better, especially in terms of their attack and also their kicking game. Like Jamison has got a great kicking game, especially around the 50-22s, and seen opportunities in behind. So it just gives a bit of balance to them. And they're just delivering always up front. Like, they are just big men that are just prepared to go into the dark places. And we spoke about it when they played the All Blacks, but they just will keep doing the same thing. A little bit like the Crusaders. You know what's coming in their phase play, but they'll just keep running their lines. They're committed to their role in their systems, and they'll just keep coming. If the ball comes to them, it comes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But they don't shy away. They don't get bored of doing the predictable. And because of that and the options they have off it, it's not that predictable.
What I did like as well, because, we've been so accustomed to seeing them getting on the front foot. You look at that All Black series, they were able to win the advantage line and be able to play some really good footy. But for me, I really enjoyed seeing them win ugly. Now, they didn't get everything their own way. They weren't able to get some really good attacking phase shape and really break the South Africans due to that line speed push. But, they found a way to be able to win. They took the opportunities. You look at the 46th minute with that line out more around the front with Van der Fleer scoring that try, and then obviously with Hansen scoring that try in the corner off some click attack. They were able to score tries and show that kind of attacking prowess that they're accustomed to seeing. But winning ugly sometimes with an Irish team that I think in the past, if they have been given a lot of pressure and thinking like they should be winning these games, are they peaking too early? I think they're answering a lot of these questions with the way they are performing. I think that win on the weekend against the South Africans showed that to me that they're the number one team in the world and sitting pretty nicely with results like that on the weekend.
I'm glad you brought up the Mac Hansen try, because we've been waiting to see what Rassie's going to say. He's not on the sideline as the water boy, he's up in the coach's box. And we've been waiting to see what happens when Rassie gets back and gets his Twitter account going during this series, especially with the referees. Will he have learned his lesson? Well, it appears he hasn't really learned his lesson, because he tweeted, "Tough test match, thanks for support from SA. Thanks to the Island supporters at the Viva, you definitely understand the game, and it's great to play in an atmosphere like that. Surely was a game of big battles but small margins," which in itself doesn't sound like too much of a bad tweet. That's not tremendously controversial, but attached to that was a video. And it was a video of the Mac Hansen try. There was a kick through the ruck from Dan Sheehan, which obviously is illegal. Ireland get the turnover, ball goes out to Hansen. They did a really good job of finishing that and scoring. Off the back of that part of the video was when Eben Etzebeth broke in the last couple of minutes going downfield and then got pulled back because Franco Mostert had put a little kick through in the ruck and they were pulled back. So already he's looking at tiny moments of refereeing decisions, putting them online and putting the pressure on the referees, getting the public to ramp up the pressure on the referees. And this bloke from Georgia, Nika Amushakeli, I just feel sorry for him. Like, Chip, it looks like he hasn't learned his lesson here.
He hasn't in a way, but he's trying to do it in a more subtle way, obviously. But I think it's like, man, on one hand, there's arguments of more ball and play and less TMO interaction and, you know, allowing the refs to make calls and understand. And then you get something like this. It's like contradicts that. They're not going to get everything right. But if we keep slowing the game down to pull things back, I think you've got to take it on the chin for human error. And he clearly, it's not like the ref decided not to see, Sheehan's one and then just decided to see Mostert's one. Do you know what I mean? But he's a strong personality, and I don't think he probably appreciated being smacked on the hand.
Well, he's got a thirst for refereeing blood, Bryn. Like, it's obvious that he feels like he is the man to make referees in world rugby accountable. And it feels a bit unfair. A ref can't get everything right.
What it does do for that South African group, it takes the pressure off them. Like we're talking about Rassie Erasmus now, around that as well. So it could take a little bit of pressure around that group. But what it does do, it holds the referees accountable, whether it's right or wrong or not. People will say it's right. Some people say it's wrong. What it does do, it highlights around the issues that he's wanting from his team to be able to be brought out to the refs and being able to officiate it going forward around getting that right. And like you said, like we've said, he's a powerful personality and he's putting pressures on the refs to be able to try and make the right call for his team, which is more important for himself and his group, is for South Africa, no one else.
Yeah, but it feels like they could have won that game on the pitch despite that, and they didn't because they weren't up to it, Jip. And at some point, he's got to stop pointing the gun at the refs and turn that barrel around publicly and go, okay, this isn't all on them. Some of this is on us.
the only thing I've got to reference to it is obviously Tom Coventry. We'd have calls that go against us, and it's exactly what he'd say to us. I don't want to hear about that. We can't control that. What we could have controlled is these 6 clips that you didn't do your job. And if you had done your job, you would have put yourself in a position to win.
That's the tall and the short of it, really. So we look forward to see what he has to say, next week when South Africa play France. And the week after that,
Let's keep
through the World Cup.
Keep a stat on this, Ross. Who has the better penalty count moving forward for that game?
Power rankings after the first weekend of the Autumn Internationals. Bryn, who are your top 5 in what order?
Top Ireland, second France, third All Blacks, fourth. Fourth South Africa, and fifth England.
Yep, same page.
No, I'd go Argentina to 5th. And I think they start climbing up there if they back up this weekend.
It's strong and interchangeable.
Australia's performance warrants them, to move into the top 8. I don't know if Wales quite solidified their position, and it's a big week for them as well in terms of that sort of top 8.
Yeah, okay, predictions for the weekend. We've got a lot of footy again this weekend. Let's start with the Women's World Cup first up. The grand final, who wins this? England, New Zealand.
Black Ferns in a tight tussle. Pretty similar to that French game. It's going to be tough, though. We're going to have to get a lot of things right, and hopefully we can get our kicking game a little bit better if that's with the solution that hopefully they do moving forward, and the breakdown area. But, backing our girls all the way.
Yep.
Yeah, Black Ferns for me. I really liked Wayne Smith after the game. Like, he was already in the process of how are we going to be better to make sure that we beat this English side, and their improvements in other areas, but also their mettle for the big occasion. They got behind, made their way back, they got ahead, they held on to a lead under immense pressure, and I don't think it'll be much different this week. And I think those experiences and the belief that they'll get from that, I think they'll win the game.
The lads are fired up. This is another 2-0 in South Africa moment, possibly. Who knows? We'll see.
I'll go on my shield. I'll go on my shield on this one. Doesn't bother me if we get the hate for this.
France v Canada in the 3rd/4th playoff.
France.
Oh, France.
For me.
France,
right, yeah. Let's move through to the men's internationals. On Sunday, New Zealand time, there's a lot going on. So, quickly, Ireland, Fiji. Bryn.
Ireland.
Italy, Australia. Jipper.
Australia.
England v Japan.
England.
Wales, Argentina.
Argentina.
France, South Africa.
South Africa.
I'll go against the grain. I'll go for France.
And into Monday morning.
I'm against the grain, me old mate. The French is the easy predict.
No, mate. On the weekend, mate.
Right. Crusaders know how to claim underdog status, Chip. You know that. You know that. Barbarians versus All Blacks 15.
All Blacks 15.
All Blacks 15.
And Scotland versus the All Blacks.
The All Blacks.
All Blacks.
Man, who is going to sleep this weekend? This is another big weekend of rugby.
And how good was Stevenson?
Yeah.
We haven't had a moment to celebrate Sean Stevenson.
Yeah, should have been there the whole time.
If there's one more injury to those outside backs, you'd have to think he would be next.
Right, lads. Okay, thank you very much, Bryn. Appreciate your time once again. Really looking forward to watching the footy and this and hearing your thoughts next week. Jipper, thank you as well. Enjoy West Auckland. Have a wonderful experience out there for the next day or so.
Cheers, team.
One of the best places on the
Thanks,
planet.
Mates.
Awesome. Catch you guys. And thank you very much for tuning in to another Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Big weekend of footy. Make sure you catch all the action on Sky Sport, all the analysis on RugbyPass's channels. We'll see you next week. Mā te wā.